They offered me a fifth of what my home was worth. When I refused, they set it on fire. But what they didn't know? I had hidden cameras, receipts, and no intention of backing down. This wasn't just a fight for my land, it was war. And I came ready to burn their whole plan down. It was one of those quiet mornings that seemed too perfect to trust. The coffee was hot, the porch was shaded just right, and the damn birds were chirping like they'd been hired by a meditation app. I should have known peace like that never lasts. I was halfway through sanding a cedar board for the new wine rack in the basement when a knock echoed from the front door. Not the neighborly kind either, the kind that's all wrist and entitlement. I wiped my hands on my jeans, opened the door, and there she stood. Power suit in July, bleach blonde bob sharp enough to cut glass, smile tighter than a noose. "Mr. Marshall?" she asked like she didn't already know. "Depends who's asking. I'm Karen Stockton, president of the Brookstone Pines Homeowners Association." There it was, the HOA. I felt the coffee curdle in my stomach. "I think there's been a mistake," I said. "My property isn't part of your HOA." She laughed like I'd told a cute joke. "Oh, I'm well aware, but let's just say, we're looking to expand our community vision and your property's a bit of a, what's the word? Blight." That got a twitch out of my left eye. My home wasn't some cookie-cutter pastel box with vinyl shutters. I'd built half this place myself. Reclaimed stone, solar array, terraced garden. It had soul. Something her neighborhood of architectural clones hadn't seen since the bulldozers came through. "I came by with an offer," she continued, slipping a manila envelope into my hand like a back-alley deal. "We're prepared to purchase your home for $180,000 in cash." I blinked, then blinked again. This property was appraised at $900 last year. "Yes," she said with a sympathetic nod, "and it's only going down from here. No offense, but your aesthetic choices aren't exactly boosting community values." I handed the envelope back. "Not interested." Karen didn't flinch, just looked over my shoulder into the house like she already owned it. "You might want to reconsider. The board is prepared to fast-track some changes in zoning and noise regulations. This whole block is transitioning." She said that like she was turning it into a spa, not gentrifying me out of existence. "I'm good," I said, "and again, not part of your HOA. Yet," she added, stepping back with that same Stepford smile. "Have a lovely day, Mr. Marshall." She left in a silver Lexus that probably cost more than her personality. I shut the door and stood there for a minute, just absorbing the audacity of it all. Then I walked to the office and pulled out the paperwork from when I bought the property. My land sat just outside the boundaries of Brookstone Pines, technically an unincorporated strip left over from before the development swallowed everything. A few days later, I noticed the drone, not a toy one either. Commercial grade, quiet as a whisper, hovering just above the tree line behind my garden. It stayed there for about 15 seconds, then zipped off. At first, I told myself it could have been a hobbyist, but then it came back. Different angle, lower. It hovered right in front of my solar panels and then over the garage. That night, I installed the first set of hidden cameras. No ring crap, real gear, wide-angle lenses, heat sensors, covert placement. One inside the old birdhouse, another on a tree branch with a fisheye view of the driveway, a third inside a fake sprinkler. I'd done 30 years in fire rescue. I knew how to see things before they went up in smoke. A week later, I spotted two guys parked across the street in a black SUV. They were pretending to read the newspaper and drink iced coffee at 6 in the morning. When I stepped out to pick up my trash bin, one of them subtly snapped a photo with his phone. I stared him down until he rolled up the window and drove off. The next day, HOA flyers started showing up on my mailbox. Improving the community starts with you, they said next to a stock photo of a man smiling while painting a fence. One flyer even had my address printed in bold red at the bottom with a note: "We invite you to participate in the beautification process." I didn't respond. Then came the town hall meeting. They were smart. They didn't name me directly. But Karen took the mic with tears in her eyes and a voice like she was pitching a Hallmark movie. "There's a property in our district right on the edge that's been sadly neglected. We've tried to offer help. We've tried to be reasonable, but we fear for what it might become without proper stewardship. Our community deserves better." Applause. I sat in the back row, arms crossed. No one noticed me, at least not yet. But I could feel it. The tide was coming, the smiles were all just makeup over knives. That night, as I reviewed the camera footage for the third time, I caught a flicker in the bushes behind the garage. It wasn't a coyote. It was a man, hooded, walking the property line with a flashlight. He didn't break in, not yet, but he was mapping something. I watched the video on loop for 10 minutes and then I emailed the footage to a cloud drive with triple encryption. Whatever this was, it wasn't over, not by a long shot. The next time the black SUV showed up, I was ready. I watched it through the blinds while sipping coffee like it was a war ritual. They didn't linger this time, just drove past slowly, snapped another photo of my driveway, and disappeared down the hill. That same afternoon, I found the utility access panel behind my tool shed pried open. Whoever did it knew what they were doing. No broken hinges, no scattered dirt. The lock wasn't even cut, it was picked. Inside, the breaker box had been tampered with, a few switches halfway flipped, almost like someone was testing how much they could mess with before something sparked. I called the police. Officer Reynolds came out, a guy I knew from when I taught fire safety seminars at the precinct. He did a basic report, asked a few routine questions, and shrugged with a defeated look. "No signs of forced entry. Could be kids," he said, already half thinking about his lunch. "Kids with lock-picking tools and schematics for underground power lines?" I asked. "Yeah," he replied. "Or YouTube." He wasn't going to do anything. I knew that look. It was the same one I'd seen 100 times when people ignored fire hazards until it was too late. The next day, a new letter showed up, official-looking with a Brookstone Pines letterhead and gold foil logo. According to the HOA board, my landscape features were now under review due to potential violations of community ecological integrity standards. I laughed when I read that out loud. What the hell did that even mean? The note ended by informing me that my refusal to participate could lead to temporary structural easement. That's the kind of nonsense legalese people invent when they don't own the land but want to act like they do. And then Karen came back. She showed up in the evening just as I was hauling in lumber from the truck. She didn't even park in front of my house. She parked in my driveway like she owned the place. Got out in high heels and a wrap dress like she was about to sell me insurance. "I'm concerned," she said, all feigned sweetness. "We've received several community complaints about safety issues, electrical hazards, debris. There was a fire in the area recently, you know." "There wasn't," I replied. "And even if there was, this wouldn't be it." "Well," she smiled, "perception is everything. You don't want to be the house that drags down the whole block." She handed me another envelope. This one was thin, a single page. It was a community declaration of intent announcing that the HOA was investigating potential redevelopment initiatives for properties under transition. "They're not subtle, are they?" I asked. "Some people need help letting go," she said, eyes twinkling. "I'm not one of them," I said. "Try the next door." She left without another word, but she didn't need to say more. I could feel the noose tightening. 2 nights later, the dog started barking just past midnight. By the time I got out there, the chain-link gate leading to the garden had been unlatched. Nothing stolen, nothing obviously damaged. But the sensor lights had been unscrewed. Someone had come and gone like a damn ghost. I checked the footage. One figure, black hoodie, same guy from before. Only this time he poured something onto the dry patch near the side wall. Not enough to ignite anything. Just a test, a threat, a message. That's when I doubled down on the security. Bought 2 thermal cameras, one mounted above the patio, the other hidden inside a fake garden gnome. I installed infrared motion sensors with silent alerts. The house became a surveillance hive, and I was the queen bee with insomnia. The next HOA meeting went fully off the rails. I didn't attend, but my neighbor Dave did. He came by the following morning with a cigarette in one hand and the kind of face you only wear after watching a live train derailment. "They're talking about eminent domain," he said. "Karen told the room your property could be seized if it's declared a safety hazard. She said she's working with a non-profit partner to repurpose your land for a community shelter." My stomach sank. "She showed sketches, Steve, floor plans, for your house. It even had your tree marked on it." I didn't say anything. I just nodded, thanked him, and walked inside. Sat at the desk, opened my files, every permit, every land deed, every survey, every inspection report I ever got since buying the place. I wasn't just fighting over land anymore. I was fighting a goddamn narrative. Later that night, one of the new heat sensors pinged. I pulled up the feed. There they were, 2 figures, black clothes, masks, gloves, one of them dragging a 5-gallon container, the other scanning the perimeter with a flashlight that clicked off every time a sensor lit up. They didn't light the fire, not yet. They just walked the ground, tested angles, checked shadows. It was a dry run. I didn't call the cops, not this time. I saved the footage, uploaded it to the cloud, and printed stills just in case. They were going to come back. I could feel it in my bones like a storm an hour before the first drop. But when they did, they wouldn't know what was waiting for them. It happened at exactly 3:17 in the morning. I woke up not from a sound, but from a feeling, like the air pressure had shifted inside my lungs. That 6th sense never left me even after retiring. When you've seen enough fires up close, you start recognizing them by instinct. By the time I reached the window, the sky above the garage was pulsing orange. The side structure, my old tool room and attached carport, was fully ablaze. Flames licked the edges of the cedar overhang like they were tasting it. My heart spiked, but my training kicked in. I threw on boots, grabbed the extinguisher from the kitchen, and hit the ground running. The cameras had already sent alerts. I had full visuals. 2 masked figures caught on infrared just 10 minutes prior, moving like ghosts near the back gate. The accelerant trail they left lit up beautifully on thermal before the fire ever sparked. I made it to the side yard and managed to hold the flames back from the garden with the extinguisher. The fire department arrived within 7 minutes, bless them, but the tool room was lost. Charred, roof collapsed. The smell of melted plastic, gasoline, and scorched earth burned in my sinuses. They asked questions. I answered. I told them about the threats, about the surveillance, about the previous trespassing. I handed them a flash drive with time-stamped footage and cloud links. The fire captain, a guy named Jaramillo, gave me a look I hadn't seen since my last arson scene 10 years ago. The kind that says, "Yeah, this was no accident." Neighbors emerged in robes and slippers, murmuring among themselves in the flickering red and blue lights. Karen appeared last, wrapped in a designer shawl and faux concern. "Oh, Steve," she said, voice syrupy with sympathy, "this is just terrible. Are you okay? Do you think it would electrical?" "No," I said flatly. "I don't." She pressed her hand to her chest like she was about to faint. "My God, that's awful. Maybe this is a sign, though. I mean, What if this place really isn't safe anymore? Have you considered relocating? The community would absolutely support you. That last part made my skin crawl. Support was HOA code for push you out gently before we shove. By noon the next day, local news vans were outside, not because of me, because of her. Karen had called a press conference. She stood in front of the burned wreckage in a fitted navy blazer and high heels that sank slightly into the grass with every step. Her makeup was flawless. Her lies were even smoother. This tragedy highlights the urgent need for redevelopment and care in our transitional neighborhoods, she said, staring solemnly into the camera. That's why the HOA is announcing a bold initiative today. Project Hope Hearth. It sounded like a scam before she even explained it. Apparently, Hope Hearth was a proposed women's shelter and trauma recovery center to be built on land where renewal could rise from ashes. She never said my name, never needed to. She gestured broadly to the smoking remains behind her and talked about unmaintained properties and vacant structures vulnerable to criminal activity. She unveiled a set of blueprints. My blueprints. I recognized the garden path, the layout of my porch, even the stupid walnut tree I'd been pruning for weeks. They didn't just want to rebuild on my land. They wanted to keep the damn aesthetic. The media ate it up. A website launched that afternoon, brookstonehope.org, donations open. Goal, $1 million. Emotional testimonies, some stock footage of women crying in shelters, and of course a tab that read, redevelopment timeline pending property acquisition. I wasn't even out of my own driveway yet. By evening, the internet was ablaze. Hashtags, TikToks. Look at this beautiful idea born from tragedy. I read tweets from people halfway across the country saying, Hope Hearth is exactly what we need in more towns. A few suggested I should do the right thing and donate the land. I sat there at my kitchen table watching the PR machine spin the fire like it was a phoenix, and I realized they'd planned this. Every inch of it. From the offer to the intimidation to the ignition. They wanted me out. They wanted the land. And now they had public sympathy. But what they didn't have, what they couldn't control, was the footage. I pulled up the video files again. This time I paused on the frame I'd skimmed past earlier. One of the masked figures walking near the garden had turned just briefly. The edge of his hood slipped back, revealing a profile I recognized. Sharp jawline, freckle under the left eye, nose that had been broken at least once. Justin Stockton, Karen's son. 3 years ago, he'd been arrested for torching a neighbor's car after a party. Charges dropped. Youthful mistake. Moved back in with his mom when the court ordered rehab. Supposedly reformed. But there he was, on my land, with a jug of accelerant. I printed the still frame. Then I printed 3 more just to be safe. I didn't call the police yet. This wasn't going to be some anonymous tip. This was going to be surgical. The house still smelled like smoke. Outside, the siding was scorched. My tools were gone. But I sat in that chair and smiled for the first time in days. They thought they'd set the trap. They had no idea they were the ones already in it. I walked into the precinct with a folder under one arm and a USB drive in my jacket pocket. No press, no fanfare, just a pissed-off man with receipts. The front desk officer buzzed me through when I asked for Detective Sandra Myers. I'd worked with her before, years ago during a fire code overhaul. She was sharp, didn't waste time, and had a radar for bullshit that could rival mine. She met me in the small conference room, already flipping through a notepad. I handed her the folder without a word. Security footage? She asked. Everything. Time-stamped, high-resolution, full infrared overlays. The second guy stays masked the whole time, but the first one, he slips. It's him. She didn't need to ask who. She plugged the drive into the laptop on the table and let it play. Her expression barely moved, but her pen scratched a little faster as the thermal video showed Justin Stockton dragging a container across my backyard. When it hit the frame with his face, half visible, caught in the glow of the motion sensor, Sandra leaned forward. That's him. God damn, she really sent her own kid. She sent more than that, I said. She's building an empire on the bones of my garage. Sandra nodded once and stood up. I'll get a warrant. By that evening, Justin was in cuffs. They picked him up 2 blocks from the HOA clubhouse where he apparently spent his afternoons helping digitize records. I'd laugh if I weren't still pulling the smell of burned plywood out of my clothes. Karen, of course, clammed up immediately. She released a statement through her lawyer the next morning. The HOA board has no knowledge of the alleged incident and condemns all forms of property damage. Classic corporate tap dancing. She even managed to wedge in a mention of the shelter project, calling it an inspiring movement that must not be derailed by unsubstantiated personal attacks. Except mine weren't unsubstantiated. The pressure started to mount when local journalists caught wind of the footage. I didn't leak it, not directly, but I might have passed it to a friend at the fire department who knew someone at Channel 6. By Thursday, the video was everywhere. Karen's name trended locally. The HOA's official Facebook page went down for maintenance. Then the real twist hit. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, my lawyer, Deborah Hausman, stone-faced and brilliant, got a package. Inside were affidavits, 4 of them. Supposedly from concerned neighbors who claimed to have seen me burning trash illegally, muttering about starting over and neglecting hazardous wiring in the side structure. It was laughable. I hadn't burned anything since 4th of July barbecue coals. And muttering about starting over? That's either bad fiction or Karen playing psychologist. Deborah raised an eyebrow. You know any of these people? I scanned the names. 2 rang vague bells, neighbors from further down the block I hadn't spoken to in months. 1 was a name I didn't recognize. The 4th one hit me like a hammer. Clara Jensen? I asked. She's dead. Been dead for almost 2 years. Deborah's brow arched a little higher. We cross-referenced the statements. One of them, Roger P., had supposedly moved out 6 months earlier according to property records. Another used a phone number that traced back to the HOA secretary's office. And Clara's name. Well, that one was straight up forged. We pulled her obituary from the local paper and filed it right alongside the affidavit in court. It was sloppy, but it was bold. Karen wasn't just trying to smear me. She was actively manufacturing witnesses to build a fake case against me. Deborah filed an emergency motion to have all 4 affidavits dismissed and formally submitted evidence of fraud. We attached screenshots, cross-referenced documents, and a digital trail that showed the PDFs were all created on the same machine, an HOA laptop. The judge didn't like that one bit. During the next hearing, he looked over his glasses like a disappointed school principal. Let me get this straight, he said. You attempted to submit forged witness statements using the name of a deceased resident, and you expect this court to believe there is no malice involved? Karen's lawyer tried to weasel around it, blamed an overzealous staff member, called it an unfortunate clerical error. But the damage was done. The court ruled the affidavits inadmissible. The fraud allegations opened a side investigation into HOA practices. And Karen? She looked shaken for the first time. Not furious, not smug, just cornered. The best part came after court. Dave, the neighbor who told me about the blueprints, caught up with me outside the courthouse. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. I need to come clean, he said, lighting a cigarette with shaking fingers. They tried to get me to sign one of those letters. Told me it was just a petition to increase HOA security funds. When I asked questions, they got weird. Karen said I'd get a discount on dues if I helped the narrative. You didn't sign anything? No, but I didn't say anything either. That's on me. I clapped him on the shoulder. Not anymore. By that night, 2 more neighbors came forward. One of them had an email from Karen directly requesting supportive testimony in exchange for preferential landscaping privileges. Another admitted she'd been offered a gift card to a local spa if she affirmed visual evidence of negligence. It was a full-on unraveling. HOA board members started bailing. One by one, they issued press statements about restructuring, lack of oversight, and personal overreach. Karen tried to pivot, called herself a visionary misunderstood, but it was too late. The fire hadn't just lit up my tool shed, it had blown the lid off the whole rotten machine. I sat in that courtroom wearing the same charcoal blazer I'd worn to my wife's memorial. Not because I was being sentimental, but because I wanted to remind myself what loss felt like. The fire hadn't just singed the wood and wiring. I was watching people try to burn down the only place that still felt like home. Across the aisle sat Karen, dressed like she'd just walked off the set of a daytime courtroom drama. Crisp white suit, giant pearl earrings, and a face so stiff with Botox I wondered if she could blink. Her attorney, some corporate windbag with too much gel in his hair, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Judge Halverson took the bench, a silver-haired man who gave off big "don't test me" energy. He didn't waste time. No introductions, no unnecessary formalities. Just opened with a gravel-voiced, "Let's get to it." Deborah stood and launched like a missile. We are here today because my client, Mr. Stephen Marshall, narrowly escaped a coordinated act of arson intended to pressure him into relinquishing property that certain members of the Brookstone Pines Homeowners Association had already begun planning to acquire. She laid it all out, methodically. The offers, the surveillance, the fire, the forged witness statements, the community PR stunt, and finally, my favorite part, the footage. She walked over to the TV set up near the jury box and hit play. There was Justin Stockton, hoodie slipping just enough to show his face, caught on infrared in my backyard with a container of accelerant, clear as day. The room went quiet like the air itself got embarrassed for them. Karen's lawyer objected, of course, something about lack of full facial confirmation, but the judge shut him down. Mr. Marshall's footage was obtained legally, time-stamped, and has already been validated by law enforcement, he said. Motion denied. Karen didn't move, just stared straight ahead, lips pursed like if she held her breath long enough maybe she'd vanish. Then came the rebuttal. The HOA's lawyer tried to spin it all into a misunderstanding. Miss Stockton has dedicated herself to the betterment of this community. The intention behind the proposed shelter was pure, and any overlap in planning materials was coincidental. Deborah stepped forward, cool as ever. Your Honor, may I submit Exhibit 14? She handed the clerk a folder, then turned to the judge. This is a development permit application filed with the City Planning Office 4 months ago. It lists Brookstone Pines as the applicant and includes preliminary renderings for a residential complex titled Hope Residences. The application specifically references the address belonging to my client. Halverson flipped through the pages, his brow furrowed deeper with each turn. There's more, Deborah continued. Included in the attached emails are communications between Ms. Stockton and a private developer, Bright Path Holdings. She refers to the property as inevitable and asks for expedited architectural mock-ups to be used for public alignment. The words landed like punches. Inevitable. Public alignment. Even the jurors shifted in their seats. We weren't just dealing with arson anymore. This was a premeditated land grab. When it came time for Karen to testify, her lawyer advised her to stay quiet. She invoked the Fifth on anything remotely incriminating. And the irony? That silence spoke louder than anything she could have said. In the end, the court found her son guilty of arson and trespassing. But it wasn't just about him. The real meat of the trial was civil. I'd filed suit against both Karen and the HOA for conspiracy, defamation, harassment, destruction of property, and attempted fraud. After 3 days of testimony, evidence, expert witnesses, and one very dramatic moment where Deborah dropped the forged affidavit signed by a dead woman onto the floor in front of the jury, the verdict came down. The HOA was ordered to pay me $1,200,000 in damages, enough to rebuild, with plenty left over. Karen was personally fined and referred to the state attorney's office for potential charges of fraud and witness tampering. The HOA itself was placed under administrative supervision, with a court-appointed auditor assigned for the next 18 months. I didn't jump up and cheer. I didn't gloat. But I did glance over at Karen just once. Her expression was blank. Not defeated, not angry. Just hollow. Like the part of her that used to believe she could control everything had finally snapped in half. Outside the courthouse, reporters crowded the steps. I didn't stop to talk. I just nodded to Deborah, gave a few short answers. Yes. I felt justice was served. No, I wasn't planning to move, and walked straight to my truck. There was still smoke in my hair from the trial. But it wasn't the kind that clings to skin. It was the kind that comes after the fire's already gone out, when you know what's left is yours again. It's strange, the silence after a war. Not peace exactly, more like a vacancy. The kind that settles over scorched ground once the smoke clears and the last camera crew packs up. That's what my property felt like, emptier somehow. But not broken. The charred ruins of the side structure had been bulldozed and hauled away. Insurance came through quicker than expected. Turns out, when you hand over a flash drive of felony-level evidence, adjusters tend to expedite your claim. I even got a bonus for advanced security measures. Hell of a thing getting paid because someone tried to burn your house down. Rebuilding started fast. I hired a local crew. Real craftsmen, not the HOA's preferred contractors. They worked with respect, not just for the job, but for the story behind it. One guy, Leo, told me his aunt had lived in a town where the HOA made her repaint her house 3 times in one summer. He swore every hammer strike he made was a personal screw you to people like Karen. But Karen was gone. Well, not gone. Not yet. But she'd vanished from the neighborhood. Her Lexus was never in the driveway. Her lawn grew long enough to get fined by her own bylaws. The HOA stripped her of her presidency in a vote so fast you'd think she'd stolen Christmas. Officially, she was on leave. Unofficially, she was radioactive, and the hits just kept coming. Turns out the nonprofit partner she'd been working with, Bright Path Holdings, wasn't a nonprofit at all. It was a shell company owned by her college roommate who just happened to specialize in flipping distressed properties for upscale development. Once the court-appointed auditor started digging, the emails between them surfaced. Let's just say the phrases coordinated pressure and property conversion don't look great in all caps on a PowerPoint slide. The city pulled the permit application for Hope Residences. The website went down. Donation refunds were issued. A few hundred angry commenters demanded accountability. Karen tried to post a video apologizing for any misunderstandings, but it got ratioed so hard she deleted her entire online presence within 2 days. I didn't dance on her grave, but I did enjoy a slow sip of bourbon the night I found out the IRS was auditing her Community Enrichment Fund. Meanwhile, the neighborhood, my neighborhood, started acting human again. Dave came by with a 6-pack and no apologies, just quiet help. He helped me haul cinder blocks for the new retaining wall. Janet from 2 doors down brought over banana bread, said she was sorry for staying quiet. Even Alan, the guy who once told me to mow my lawn more Americanly, offered to loan me his power washer. Something had shifted. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was relief. But I felt it. The HOA no longer ruled this street, not with Karen gone, not with court supervision breathing down their necks. The new HOA interim president, a young guy named Marcus who wore band tees and drove a hybrid, stopped by to open a dialogue. He said they were reviewing all past policies and exploring less adversarial models for neighborhood cohesion. I asked him what that meant in English. "We're trying not to be assholes," he said, and that was good enough for me. But the strangest part came a week later. A letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single typed sentence. "You got lucky this time." No signature, no postmark, just the message. I scanned it for fingerprints. Nothing. Showed it to Sandra Myers, who raised an eyebrow but didn't flinch. "Someone's pissed they underestimated you," she said. "Could be anyone. But if they're smart, it's the last note you'll ever get." I didn't take it as a threat. Not really, more like a confession. A quiet acknowledgement from whoever still believed this was supposed to be a clean, quiet acquisition. Instead, it turned into a courtroom bonfire. I tacked the note to my garage wall, right above the new workbench. A reminder. Not of fear, but of survival. Then I did what felt right. I threw a party. Nothing huge. Just neighbors, some old friends, a rented grill, and enough burgers to clog a small town. No speeches, no cameras, just good food, cold drinks, and music that made even the stiff old guy from across the street nod his head. Someone asked if I planned to move now that I had the money. I said, hell no. They laughed, but I meant it. This was still my home, and now it was mine in every sense that mattered. 6 months later, my grass grew wild on purpose. Not overgrown, not messy, just alive. Native plants, pollinator beds, a few unruly tomato vines that had climbed up the side of the new trellis like they paid rent. I'd torn out the sterile HOA-mandated lawn and replaced it with something real. Organic chaos, beauty with bite. One Saturday morning, I sat on the porch with a mug of black coffee watching a blue jay dive bomb a squirrel off the bird feeder. The sun was already cooking the porch railings, and I was exactly where I wanted to be. That's when I saw her. Karen. She wasn't in a Lexus anymore. It was some dented silver sedan that looked like it had opinions. She pulled to a stop across the street, engine coughing, windows rolled up tight. For a moment, I thought she'd just keep driving. But she got out. No heels, no designer blazer. Just jeans, a loose blouse, and the expression of someone who had eaten a steady diet of public disgrace for half a year. She crossed the street slowly, stopped at the edge of my driveway like she expected it to bite her. "Hi, Steve." I sipped my coffee and didn't respond right away, just watched her shift her weight, brace herself. "I'm not here to, I don't know, start anything. I just thought maybe I owed you something." "An apology?" She nodded, eyes tired. "That, and maybe a thank you." That one almost made me laugh. "For what?" "For not ruining me completely," she said. "You could have. I gave you every opportunity, but you didn't gloat. You didn't go on the news. You just held the line." I stared at her for a while, trying to decide whether I believed a single word of it. "You burned down part of my house," I said. "You sent your son to light the match." "I didn't send him," she said quickly. "He acted on his own." I raised an eyebrow. She sighed. "Okay, I didn't stop him. And I created the environment where, yeah, I know." We stood there, the summer wind rolling between us like a referee unsure if it was safe to blow the whistle. "What do you want, Karen?" She looked down at her shoes. They weren't new. "Nothing. I just wanted to see it. One more time. The house. I always thought it was an eyesore. And now, She looked up, eyes scanning the rough wood, the crooked wind chimes, the climbing green, the solar panels angled like a middle finger to conformity. "Now I think it's beautiful." She turned and walked back to the car without another word. No dramatic exit, no tears, just silence. I didn't watch her drive away. Instead, I went inside, grabbed a roll of painter's tape and a scrap piece of plywood, and walked out to the end of the driveway. There, on the new fence post, I tacked up a handmade sign. No trespassing, no soliciting, no HOA bullshit. Below it, smaller. Yes, I'm serious. Later that evening, kids from the neighborhood asked if they could use my garden shed for a DIY haunted house in the fall. I said yes, as long as someone cleaned up the fake blood. Two of the neighbors who'd once sided with Karen asked to borrow my lawn chairs for a community movie night. And Dave brought over a pie, no explanation, just a sheepish look and 2 forks. I sat on the porch, lights twinkling on the newly rebuilt overhang, watching as people passed by and didn't pretend not to see me anymore. The place felt lighter. Not perfect, but earned. You see, some people talk about fighting for their home like it's a metaphor. For me, it wasn't. It was 2 court cases, 1 felony conviction, a half-burned garage, and a stack of receipts taller than my dog. But I got it back. And now? Now I wake up, sip my coffee, and smile every time I see that hand-painted sign by the fence. Because in this neighborhood, on this plot of land, with this mismatched siding and wild-ass garden, I won.